Welcome to Commander Central, episode 151. And today we're going to do a bunch of things. We're going to answer some listener questions. We're going to talk about some games we played and just generally BS about EDH. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
And Chris is not here on a Monday show, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of thrown our plans a little bit awry, and we're going to kind of do a free-for-all show instead since he's not around.
Yeah. Works
so Max,
for me.
how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
We're recording on a Saturday, which is unusual for us.
Very weird. Saturday evening.
Yeah.
It's like we're recording on a Thursday night.
I
just
guess,
a few
right.
days later.
So how's your weekend been so far?
Really nice. Watched Ducks game last night. They won, so that
Nice.
always makes for a good weekend. And it's nice out still.
It rained all morning, but it's nice out right now.
Right.
I just walked the dog and got to enjoy, probably the last, there's not much nice fall weather left before the snow and the miserable stuff starts. So
Ugh.
I've been kind of enjoying that, getting ready for winter. That's really it here.
You got a new car, though.
I did get a new vehicle. And we traded in two vehicles.
For one.
And for one, so we're a one vehicle household at this point.
So it's like you traded two guys' cradles for like a tropical island or,
I guess,
or like
right,
an
there we
underground
go.
sea.
We'll see how that works out.
If you guys make it, I will be impressed, honestly impressed, if you guys make it through the winter and don't say we need a second vehicle.
We'll see. Well, so I can walk to work. For
Right.
those that don't know my situation, I can walk to work. I'm close enough, and I just work from home the majority of the time.
Yeah.
So that part is easy, but there's going to be situations where, I have a dentist appointment at noon or something, and that means I have to give my wife a ride to work and then come back home to have the vehicle and then go get her after work. So, hopefully I can avoid too many of those kind of days. But, yeah, that's going to be annoying.
Well, the worst case, I can refer you on Uber or Lyft, and then I could get a little kickback on that
That's true.
as well.
I could just do that sometimes too. And actually, technically, I was thinking of this. My dentist office is walkable too. I can walk to enough. I can walk to the card store if I wanted to. I'm not that far away.
I wouldn't want to.
I mean, I wouldn't want to do it in January, but I could do it in April. It wouldn't be that bad. So. We'll see how long it lasts. It feels good for the moment, but we'll see long term if I can manage. The one thing I keep telling myself is, up until 30 years ago, most houses didn't have two cars and they survived just fine. But I guess the counter to that is once upon a time they didn't have penicillin either. So, I mean, just because once upon a time it doesn't mean it was better. So
Hey, we're gonna stretch some boundaries today, folks.
So we'll see. You did not play this. Well, you did play. You played games this week.
I played at least 2 games.
I was not there late either. I think I left about 9, so I only played 3. How were your games? Anything super exciting?
I played Dramoka because I finally made a bunch of changes in that deck from Throne. I never saw any of the new cards.
Well, okay, so this is one of the things we kind of have been discussing in Slack a little bit was dropping to 35 lands in some of the more tuned decks. And you then noticed
when I was making all my changes, I'm
that you were at 35 lands already.
Let's see how many lands I'm at. Maybe I can cut a land for
Sure.
to keep something. And I'm like, oh, I'm at 35 lands, and now I actually need to make a cut.
But you've been fine. I would say had you noticed being at 35?
No.
So you were okay running already at 35.
Yeah. I kept a really risky hand in game 2. I had 1 land and a bunch of 2-drops. I had a Talisman, Mind Stone, a Rampant Growth, a Farseek. I had all these 2-drop spells and a Plains. I just need another land to play the Talisman, and I'm golden. Turn 8, I saw that second land. And that was, it was just bad.
That feels bad when you're doing the math. And you're I'm bound to draw a land in the next 4 cards. I'll be fine if I draw 1 land in the next 4 cards.
Yeah.
And you're mathematically, no problem. Then you don't do it for 9 draws or something.
Yep. The table kind of let me sandbag for maybe through turn 5, and then Chris was like, you know what? We're going to kill everybody now.
Yeah. No, I've absolutely been there. I am going to switch, but I'm starting with my Vela deck. I'm dropping down to 35.
Okay. You have a lot of mana rocks in that deck, though. So
I have a lot of mana rocks in the deck, and the switch I'm making, I'm putting in Divining Top.
Okay.
So then the thought process is, okay, Divining Top comes down. Instead of a land, I can probably, find a land with it. So, as far as those things go,
right.
If I'm swapping out a land for a thing, that's a pretty good thing to do it with. The reason I'm putting that in is because Mystic Forge has been such a beating in that deck, and it synergizes pretty nicely with that as well, and with a few other things that care about top of the library. So
yeah.
I'm going to try it there and see if I want to do it in a few other decks. But most of my monocolor decks are already running 35. I don't have a problem. And it's not like they're that low of CMC. I guess Talrand is, but like Reki's, 3.2 something. It's like, it's not terrible, but it's not 2.5 or something.
And I mean, in the big picture of EDH, 3.2 is a really low average CMC.
Right, yes.
When this is the casual format, the kitchen table, let's have fun and play 10 drops.
You still see plenty of over 4 decks
Yeah.
if you look on EDH Rec and some of the databases for sure. So I'm going to start making that change, and we'll see how that works out for us. We have a couple of contests ongoing here right now.
We do. On Twitter, we're giving away those Ultra Pro Is It Guild sleeves that we picked up at Magic Fest Vegas.
Yeah.
So just find that tweet, retweet, and follow us, and you'll be maybe lucky enough to win them.
And for Patreon supporters, we're giving away a deck.
We are. We built that Sir Gwen Hero of Ashvale deck back on episode 147, and we are going to be giving that deck away. So if you want to hear what's in that deck, head over to that episode, give it a listen. That list is also over on our deck stats page.
147, it was that long ago. I guess with doing 2 a week, it doesn't take long to get.
Right. And now that we're recording on the same day, both of them, it seems even weirder when people start commenting on like the decks you play. So it's like, hey, I really liked all your suggestions. I'm like, to be honest, I don't remember what I said.
That was 4 shows ago. I forgot what I said.
That was legitimately a week ago when I said that.
Between 151 shows here and like the
35 we did.
Yeah, well, in the EDH Rec ones, I've done too. Like, I've done 250 some podcasts so far.
Yeah.
You'd think at some point I'd get better at this, but here we are.
That's why I set the bar really low, Dana, because then we just can go up.
I guess. No, just incremental progress is better than nothing, I suppose.
Yep.
You can also find us on flipsidegaming.com.
Head over to flipsidegaming.com, use promo code CMDR in all caps to get 10% off all orders, $10 or more.
All right.
I think that covers everything.
Everything but Patreon.
Oh, yeah. Like we said, Patreon, go over there, check out our rewards. We have the Decks You Play episodes, chances to come on the show and talk with us, along with just joining our chat room on Slack to discuss EDH and jobs and closing department stores. That was one of the big discussions this week.
Yeah, there was all kinds of bizarre things getting talked about this week.
Yeah. So head over there and check us out. And if you are able to support the show financially, we greatly appreciate it, but your listens are what matter in the long run.
Absolutely, for sure. So, Max, speaking of listeners, we have some questions here from listeners we can go over here.
We do. We have more mailbag questions.
First one we'll do is from Paul Kittner. Paul's very active on Twitter at pkittner13. And he says, what are cards you want to run but can't find slots for them? So like 102, 105, those cards that make it down to the end but never quite make the cut. There's a couple more sub-questions, but maybe we'll do that one first. Are there any ones that you like, Max, but you always kind of never quite get there?
Ooh, I've been running into this problem more with like cards I used to run that aren't quite good enough anymore, but if I had 102 cards, 105 cards, they'd still be in that deck. So like Angel of the Dire Hour is a card I used to run in Dromoka all the time. 7 mana, flash, and it pretty much is Settle the Wreckage on a body.
Yeah.
Settle the Wreckage came out. That's a little better.
Right.
But it's just another flying beater that also saves me.
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to slot that back in, but 7 mana is a lot. And it's very situational where...
Well, in that deck, too, when you leave 7 mana up...
It's obvious.
It's kind of obvious what's coming for the most part, yeah.
4 is a little more discreet just because it could be anything. It could be something else. But,
or you just don't have anything in your hand that's convenient at the time, where like when you leave 7 up, it very much feels intentional.
Exactly.
One for me, whenever I build a red deck, I really want to put Wild Ricochet in it.
That's the 2/2 red to copy and change target?
Change target of a spell and then copy it, and you can choose new targets. So, and whenever I've had it cast against me, it always feels amazing. But it's one of those spells that like I put it in any red deck I build, and then I get down to the end, and I'm like, I need to cut 3 things, and Wild Ricochet is just a good card in theory, whereas like these other 4 cards are doing something that the deck wants to be doing. So it's much easier to cut the card that's just kind of generically useful than it is to cut something that's part of the deck's game plan.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ones that kind of always tends to get cut.
Yeah, for sure.
I like Grave Betrayal a lot. It's a cool card. That's a black enchantment that when a creature dies under anyone's control, or gets put in the graveyard, return it to the battlefield under your control with a +1 counter on it.
And it becomes a zombie.
And it's a zombie, which
I always want to run the green one of that.
Which one is that?
Is the green one where it gets +1/+1 counters?
I forget.
That was a cycle, though, wasn't it, from Return to Ravnica?
Was it? It might have been. I didn't think it was, but it might have been. But Grave Betrayal, being 7 mana, like it's not that it's not a good card, but it's one of those, and it doesn't do anything until it's kind of a do nothing enchantment, basically.
Right.
So it doesn't do anything for the most part for a couple plays at least. So again, when I'm making cuts to my deck and I get down to like 103, I'm like, it's just easy to say, oh, that's 7 mana enchantment. It's 7 mana. It doesn't do anything immediately. It's just one of those cards that's easy to cut. But I would like to find room for it.
Death's Presence is the card I'm thinking of.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Whenever a creature you control dies, put +1/+1 counters on something else you control equal to its power.
And that's one of the ones I've multiple times tried to find room for it in my Kresh deck.
Oh, yeah.
But it's all the same thing. It's like it's so much mana and
so much to set up for.
And I would just rather run something more efficient.
But I bet it's in every other Kresh deck on EDHREC.
It's probably in a lot of them for sure, yeah. So those were the ones that pop out for me. I also, it's less about maybe finding room for them, but like any card that's just kind of a generically useful spell. Animate Dead is almost always going to be worth a slot in any black deck. For 2 mana, putting the best creature in a graveyard back into play under your control is always worth the 2 mana, and sometimes it's worth a lot more than 2 mana when you grab that Elesh Norn or grab something like crazy like that from a graveyard. But again, it's just for the most part, it's just generically useful. And when I'm making cuts to a deck, and I'm like, okay, this deck is trying to do this thing, and Animate Dead is not that thing. It's just a useful card. Those are the kind of things I tend to wind up cutting.
Yeah.
Every black deck ever played is probably better with Grey Merchant in it.
Well,
It's easy to cut Grey Merchant from me because it's not doing what my deck wants to be doing.
And that's really not your win style. I mean,
to a degree, that's part of it too.
Grey Merchant falls into the category for you of like Torment and Exsanguinate.
Sure, a little bit.
So.
Okay, he also asked what commanders we'd like to see more of, and if there's any things we'd like to see more support of in terms of like tribes or color combinations, mechanics, that kind of thing.
Ooh. We've gotten so much new stuff since we originally asked these questions, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah, at this point, there's just so many things out there, I think. To a degree, actually, once upon a time, when the new Commander precons would come out, I always did that thing where I'm like, I don't know if I want to build one because, there'll be a bunch of them in the shop of people playing this. At this point, there are so many things that come out, like the last year especially, there are so many new legendary creatures. It doesn't matter how good the card is. There's so many different options. People just can't build that many decks that, a brand new commander that's really like, I don't think I've actually seen a Chulane deck in our shop yet. I'd say there isn't one there, but I don't know if I've seen one yet.
That's good.
And I'm fine with that, but I'm also just like pointing out that like once upon a time when you got, maybe 6 or 7 like viable commanders per calendar year or something.
You saw them everywhere.
You'd see, right, we'd have seen like 5 Chulane decks by now. There's just so many things right now that it doesn't work that way. So I think that's good, I guess, in a way, but there's just a ton of options that I don't know what I would pick there. Support for underrated tribes. We've got a lot of the tribes that have got picked up lately.
Especially with Modern Horizons giving us like Morphon and stuff like that to even play your unsupported tribes like Kavus,
Yeah.
It still helps it big time.
Right. I do think actually that if I were to say anything, I would say I'd like to see a Kavu commander, like a dedicated one, and I'd like to see a 2-color Phoenix commander. I don't know if it would be white-red or black-red, but something with Phoenixes, because there's a lot of cool Phoenixes out there, and I don't know what the commander would do, but I'd like to see something that supported those.
Okay, that's fair.
We got a question next from Peter V. This is about playgroups or metas, Max. What is this one?
What tips do you have for maintaining comparable power levels within your meta? Do you use the 75% philosophy? Maybe like set a budget for all the decks, or just a single card budget?
So what do you do?
I build to what I want to build. Like, I guess this is going to sound extremely arrogant, but I think I have enough experience to know if I put too many powerful cards in there, whether they're expensive because they're really old or they're just really broken, such as like when Paradox Engine was legal.
Yeah.
That deck, if you put a lot of really good cards together, the deck is just going to be good. It's a good stuff deck.
Yes.
I think you got to know your meta. You got to know what you like to do. If you want to be that person that runs all the good cards, then be that person. Just don't feel bad about it.
Sure. This came up actually in our Slack this morning, and I kind of gave an answer. I'm going to repeat it here. In my head, I kind of tend to, so when having that power level discussion, everyone kind of uses that 10-point scale from the command zone to a degree. I do a much more simplified version of that. I tend to break decks roughly into one of three groups. The first group, I guess I'll call kind of untuned, and that would be a precon, or it would be a kind of an untuned precon, or it would be a commander that someone puts in a deck, and it's that person who doesn't do a deep dive on cards they put in the deck. So like the example I used when we were discussing this in our Slack was that person may have a Brea deck they built, and they don't know Fabricate as a card, the tutor, like they've never seen it, because it's at this point it's probably 10 years old. I don't think it's had any reprints.
Yeah,
so like,
I wouldn't know.
That person probably doesn't even know Fabricate is out there, and it's not in their Brea deck because of it. And then you multiply that by 10 other cards that might be good in Brea that haven't been in Standard since 2011 or something. The person doesn't have them in their deck because they have never seen them before, and they don't build decks by doing searches for those kind of cards.
Right.
So I would lump that into kind of one group. The middle group is probably the deck the group that you and I play at for the most part, where we know about Fabricate and we have it in our deck that maybe would care about artifacts, but we also just maybe have Fabricate or just have Demonic Tutor. We don't have 7 or 8 different tutors. We just have 1 or 2 tutors. When we use those tutors, we're using them to get what could be anything. It's either a way to solve a problem or to get maybe a draw engine or a way to defend yourself or a board wipe or whatever. The tutor can be used basically for anything that you need it for at that point in the game, and there's not a ton of them. And I'll say the additional thing about that kind of middle tier is you're running mana rocks, but you're running relatively inexpensive mana rocks.
Manolith.
Maybe not even Manolith, and you may have 10 mana rocks. Like I think you probably have decks that have 10 mana rocks.
Right, but you're probably more referencing like instead of running your mana vaults and crypts, you're running more of the
Signets, Talismans,
Lockets, Clue Stones.
Exactly. And Soul Ring, because everyone has a Soul Ring.
The stuff you would probably find in a bulk bin at your LGS.
And the third kind of power group I would say is, maybe you could call it CEDH, but I don't think all the decks are CEDH in this group. But those are the ones that have a ton of tutors, 6, 8, 10, 12 tutors. They have super fast mana acceleration in terms of like Crypt Vault, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal. They're running those kind of level, maybe even like Lotus Petal, just to because that one mana makes a difference. Dark Ritual even kind of things.
Yeah,
like they're running a ton of acceleration, and when they cast a tutor, they're going to get a piece that wins a game. I'm not going to get a Supreme Verdict or wipe the board so we can. I can try to assemble my wins condition in the next 4 turns. They're going to get a piece of a combo that wins immediately, and they have a bunch of ways to do that in that deck. Now, inside each of those groups, there's definitely different power levels, but the reason I bust them up in those 3 categories is my deck in that middle tier is going to get crushed by somebody for the most part who's running 9 tutors and can go get a win condition with those tutors every time.
Right.
And my deck is going to probably crush that person that doesn't know Fabricate exists because their deck is not equipped to deal with the synergy in my deck, and me who does have the pieces and does have the ability to go get answers and does have the cards that work really well together. So that's at least how I roughly break power level down when I'm thinking about that. I don't worry too much about whether my deck is too strong for somebody else in our meta that's playing at that middle tier, because the difference between my Recce deck is a really good deck and I win games with it.
Yeah.
But it's also stoppable, and I'm not, for the most part, tutoring up a piece that wins the game. I have no way to go get Genesis Wave.
Right.
It wins me the game. Like if I cast Genesis Wave, usually it's going to win the game, but like I have no way to go get that. So you can stop me from winning. I never feel bad about beating up on any of your decks with my Recce deck.
Good.
And it's better than some of your decks. Like my Recce deck's better than some of your decks, I think. But I think that, like, we're evenly matched enough that I don't worry about it too much.
Okay, I guess I'll take you off my players I don't like to play with list.
All right. So I know I just talked a lot there, but hopefully that kind of that explains that a little bit, at least of how I look at things in our meta. Our meta is almost exclusively that middle tier. People do understand that obscure cards exist, and they find them for their decks, and they build really like synergistic, lean, efficient decks, but they're also running no one's for the most part. Like, I don't see Mana Crypt almost ever. You have it in one deck, I think.
I do.
I have one in one deck, but we're both running them in decks that have really expensive commanders.
Yes.
That's what you're using it for almost always, is to make your 7-drop commander feel like a 5 or 4-drop.
Yeah. I'm not using it for my 2-drop commander to get it out right away or something.
Or to ramp into a game-winning combo on turn 3.
Right.
So it's much easier to deal with, as powerful as it is. And again, it's one deck.
Yeah.
I don't know how you maintain that. Like, I don't know if I have any good advice for how to shape your meta, though.
I guess that kind of falls into the power creep type of discussion, because it's happened. I mean, our meta's gone through the power creep before.
Yeah.
It's done it a few times, and I think we're lucky enough, I'm going to say, that it kind of like blew up in its face, and everybody kind of toned it down a couple notches. Then, some new set comes out where the power is obviously just ramped up just in the cards themselves, which happens. They've been printing more powerful cards in general. So the power level of the entire meta shifts.
Sure.
And it kind of implodes. And it's a cycle, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would guess, I've thought about this before, and I don't know, hopefully I don't phrase this in a egotistical way. We kind of were the first initial players in our meta. We were. Actually, I shouldn't say kind of. We literally were. And then granted, we're at a different shop now, but we've kind of like snowballed along the way and picked up different players in that meta. And maybe not everyone even knows we're the first ones there, but I think it's kind of shaped itself around that. When we were the first people playing a certain way, when a new person comes in, they kind of match the meta for the most part. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of shapes it.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. It was one of those things where, like, hey, we saved up, traded a bunch of stuff in, and we got a mana vault. Not even a mana crypt, just a mana vault. And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, you see a couple more people with one. Yeah. And then a couple more people, and like you see that casual snowball, like, oh, all these people put one new card in their deck, and it changed everything.
It does.
But then everybody gets that one card, and everything kind of plateaus again.
Yes. I would also guess that the fact that we have a podcast.
Do we?
We do.
Wait, these go somewhere?
Yes. And I think that I'm a relatively outspoken guy.
I'm not.
No, but you're not. But you're not like shy or anything either. You share your opinions about things.
Every now and then.
I think that to a degree also affects things in a way in the meta that makes people follow our lead a little bit.
I don't want to be the leader anymore.
Well, I'm not saying that either. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm trying to find a way to phrase this that doesn't sound
I get it.
Both egotistical and not true. I don't think people are like, what's Dana doing? That's not, I don't think, how it works. But I think that does affect things to a degree because we were the ones there in the beginning. People kind of matched that meta style. And I think people, to a degree, consciously or unconsciously listen to or match also the kind of power level we play at. I don't know how you, as somebody out there who didn't form your meta and who doesn't maybe get listened to a little bit more than the average player because you are on a podcast. I don't know how you can kind of make that work, but I think that in our case, that affects it. I would bet that happens in most places, though. Like, I bet if you go into a shop, I would bet most people's deck matches the power level of the most outspoken person in the meta. I would bet everybody that Josh Lee Kwai plays with plays at the power level Josh Lee Kwai plays at. I would just bet, I don't know, I have no way to know that, but like my guess is everyone's playing at the level he plays at.
Okay.
They match that.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all saying I'm Josh Lee Kwai, nor as influential as he is. Do not read that into that. But I think to a degree, that's how things tend to function. So that sounds awful. I totally come across as conceited, and I don't mean to. I'm not saying that, but So I don't know how that's useful for anybody. I don't know how to let you turn that into something actionable or not if you're listening. But I do think that's something that happens. I think maybe find who that person in your shop is that everyone else is maybe emulating a little bit, and I don't know. I don't know how to make that useful information or useful advice. Do you build 75%? Would you say you do? Consciously or even unconsciously? I think you do-ish.
I think unconsciously, because I couldn't even tell you what the 75% meant.
So what Jason says is you're basically building a deck at 75% power level.
Right.
You could build it stronger. You could have Mox Diamond. You could have a Crypt, whatever. You're not. You're bringing it back intentionally to make it a play experience much more likely.
To keep someone to come back.
Yes, that has weaknesses. You're built in. Now that can take a lot of different forms, but that's roughly what he's saying.
Right. So yeah, I think I definitely do it at least more unconsciously than consciously. Like flying tribal in green white is going to have a lot of weaknesses.
Sure.
It also has some strengths. It's flying tribal. Brago is probably my one not 75% deck. It's probably more. It's closer 80 to 90.
Sure. If you're looking at it that way, I would agree with that. But you're not running. That is not a. Is that your deck? It doesn't have Crypt in it.
No, that has everything else in it.
It doesn't have a Mox Diamond in it either. Like your mana rocks are you're running a little bit slower in terms of mana. For me, I tend to build with some kind of a restriction or rule in the deck I'm building. Mm-hmm. So my Vela deck only has artifact creatures. My Glissa deck only has Death Touch creatures. My Sigarda deck only has creatures that say aura or enchantment in the text box, and it has no artifacts. I have multiple different rules for a bunch of my decks. So because I have a restriction built in there, I don't feel too bad maybe running a strong card. Like, I don't run Yawgmoth's Will everywhere, but I have a Yawg's Will in my Glissa deck.
Right.
But as a Death Touch deck, I don't feel too bad running a strong card like Yawg's Will in that deck when it's restricted by something else.
Yeah.
I have a Sphinx. My Sphinx deck has, like, just similar to you. That's where my Mana Crypt is.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm running a bunch of 6-drop creatures,
with a lot of generic mana cost in them.
And it's all Sphinxes. Like, I think that restriction makes me not feel too bad about running one strong mana rock.
Nope, I agree with that.
So that's what I do. That's myself. I try to restrict myself. I also do it because it forces you to get creative in terms of how you build your deck and find new and interesting cards.
Yeah.
So it winds up being a kind of a power handicap, but it's much more about building an interesting deck. Tom asks, what are the best ways to get new players interested in EDH?
So there's a big argument saying that you probably shouldn't teach someone how to play Magic with EDH.
I mean, it's a lot.
It is a lot. So I'm going to take this question as they probably know how to play Magic, but they've never played EDH.
Assuming they know how to play Magic, right? So we'll phrase it that way.
Yeah, a big help is like find the strategy they like to play in, whether it's draft or standard or modern, and try to figure out a way to bring that into EDH. Hey, I play Tron in modern. Okay, well let's build you a cool Tron deck,
Traxos deck or something.
Right. And if they're a big modern player, they like to do broken things, and EDH is just a bigger buffet of broken things.
Yeah. One of the things, I don't have one built right now, but one thing I've done in the past is I've put together a real cheap deck to give to people if somebody wanted to have it. I've done it twice with Elves, and I did it once with Merfolk, I think. You can build a mono green elf deck with, like, who's the Overrun? Is it original Azuri that has the Overrun built in? I did one with Azuri. I did one with Yeva, Nature's Herald.
Okay.
Both of whom are like $1.
Yeah.
And then you can just jam in like 36 forests, a bunch of like Llanowar elf type creatures,
and a bunch of overruns.
You can build that deck for like $10 out of cards you have lying around for the most part. Throw it in your bag, and like when a new player's interested in playing, number one, it's a good deck to loan them.
Yeah.
Because you can win. Like if you have 6 elves out and you draw an overrun, you can just win sometimes. It's not a terrible deck. It bounces back pretty quickly. It's relatively easy to play.
Yeah.
And then you can just give it to the person afterwards.
Yeah.
Say, hey, just keep it.
That definitely has worked in the past. I know I've been there when you've done that, and the player comes back the next week.
Yeah.
And says, hey, I did some digging, and I made these changes. I like to personally have a deck that I just can give someone, not to keep, but like, here, play my Dromoka deck. Like, my Dromoka deck is the deck I let people who know how to play Magic but are still kind of new to the game or new to EDH play because it's really simple. It's Battlecruiser Magic. That's why people are typically interested in EDH to begin with. Is I just want to play Battlecruiser Magic.
Yeah, and there's no like super complicated lines in there for the most part. I'm just going to swing with flyers.
Right.
The interactions are pretty straightforward, but it's also it's a very satisfying deck to play. Hitting someone with the Baneslayer Angel is never not fun.
And I think what really helps, and I've actually had this said to a buddy of mine who just got into EDH this summer, like when Jamoka's out and you know nobody can really do anything on your turn, that kind of builds your confidence as a player to know that you're doing something right.
Kyle Ducharme asks, how would you approach holding a commander night at your house if your store doesn't do a dedicated commander night?
Dedicated is the hard part.
Sure.
Because, I mean, we're lucky and fortunate enough to have a shop, multiple shops in town, but one that always is available for us on Tuesdays to play EDH. Yes. We've tried doing Commander at someone's house, but it tends to be one of those like, hey, next Friday.
Can 2 people, 3 people come over and we'll play, but it's with a group of friends that, like, you know. It would be tough to have, like...
36 people in my apartment every Tuesday.
Or 12. Like, 3 pods would be tricky. So first things first, I will answer your question by saying don't do it. What I would suggest you do if your store doesn't have a dedicated commander night, is as long as they're like not again, like just because they don't have one doesn't mean they wouldn't have one if you went in and asked.
Right.
So to save yourself the headache, if you want to do that and just don't want to deal with a bunch of people that you don't know that well coming to your house for commander night, I would go to the shop and maybe first of all just ask, do you mind if I come in here, or can you advertise commander night on Wednesday or something? Like find a hole in their schedule that works for you. Ask if they could advertise it and say you'll be here and willing to, like, you know, teach players maybe, even if they want to learn how to play, whatever. I would say first things first, I would try to make a commander night at your store.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of stores in our area have like a Facebook page or some are even now getting like Discord. So it's easy to say, hey, you know, my LGS and wherever you live, I'm going to be at the shop on Wednesday night at 7 to play Commander. Yep. And you know what? You might sit there alone the first couple weeks, or make sure you bring a buddy so at least you can play 1v1 or something. And
that's what we did. It's like I had a friend I was playing with. We were playing at my house 1v1 Commander, and we basically said, let's go to the shop and see if people will come in and play with and start playing Commander. So we went to the shop. We picked a night. We picked a Tuesday. We went in there and sat at like 6 o'clock on a Tuesday and played the 1v1 we were already playing at my house or his house. We played each other for 2 weeks, and then Max showed up. Yeah. And I don't remember if you just happened to walk in or if the store owner told you they were playing Commander or what happened. I was essentially doing the same thing with a mutual friend at his apartment. Like, we'd just go play on Tuesday at his apartment, and then one night I just saw the store that we were playing at the time post, we're going to try doing Commander on Tuesdays, and I showed my buddy, I'm like, hey, they've already had people showing up. Why don't we go play with more than just us? Yeah. And he started posting it because my friend and I were there playing. Right. So like the store owner, we didn't even ask him. And I think if I would have asked, he would have probably done it sooner than he did. Yeah. He started posting it then, and then you guys showed up, and then he started, kind of aggressively like commenting on it. And at that point, Chris showed up 2 weeks later, and all of a sudden we had 8 to 10 people a week. Consistently. Yeah. I mean, that's all it really takes is find a night at your LGS that has an open play night, or hey, you've noticed right now that Standard is a bummer format. That tends to happen. We've seen a lot of people every now and then say, hey, I'm sick of playing Standard. Can I try EDH? You hand them a deck, and now they come to EDH nights. Now, if you do want it, like if you've got friends, I'm guessing he means for people he doesn't know that well. Because like it's easy if you're just like, hey, you guys want to come over Friday night and we'll play a few games and drink some beers and whatever. I think if you're trying to have a Commander night with people that you kind of like throw out there, man, I would say at the very least have two places to play is a big deal. Yes. Like it's one thing when you're in Vegas for the weekend and you're trying to play at a coffee table or at a bar high top, right, in between something, but if you're playing at your house, I would say go buy yourself. If you have a good dining room table, use that for one pod. And if you have more people, go buy yourself a folding plastic table from Home Depot or something for $30. Yep. Because you just need a decent place to play at for sure. Yeah. And if you aren't comfortable with having essentially strangers in your home, find a Perkins or a Denny's. Yeah. Half the time those restaurants probably won't mind a group of 6 people sitting down playing a game.
long as you order something every, if you order your coffees, order some appetizers.
We played a few games at a bar in Kansas City this spring where we got food and drinks and just played games, and they didn't care at all.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also the nice thing about like bars these days is that they're all about having board games and like card games, not just it's not a small town tavern. You go to these bigger bars and you see a 4-foot high shelf with Monopoly and Risk and cribbage boards. So like they're not going to be weirded out with you all walk in with your backpacks and sit down and bust your EDH decks out.
Yep. All right. A.M. Ramos asks, what decks are new player friendly, both budget and playability wise, that can be both casual or competitive?
I mean, you just kind of covered this, elves.
Yeah.
You can build it cheaply, you can win quickly, and it's easy to understand for new players.
Yes.
So monocolor is typically where I start.
Particularly mono green is a good place to start. And if you're playing mono green elves, is just an easy deck to build that's going to be effective.
Yeah. Don't try not to put a bunch of instants in it. Stick with sorcery speed stuff, and then over time, if you build a mono blue deck, maybe only put 2 or 3 counter spells in it because the stack is hard to understand if you're a new player.
Yep. And also, you don't want to don't annoy people.
Right.
And that's maybe meta dependent. Maybe some metas people aren't maybe being annoyed isn't a thing. You just don't care. But that's not true, I think, in most places. I have absolutely been to plenty of places where I see somebody get knocked out of the game because no one wants to deal with what their deck is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen.
Don't take my stuff.
Your playing Grand Arbiter in a CEDH kind of pod where where it's so fast, being annoyed doesn't matter. But outside of that, everyone for the most part is going to gun for you because no one wants your commander on the field. That's maybe not true everywhere, but I would say in most places it is. Going under the radar, I think, is really, really useful in general. But at the very least, even if you're not going under the radar, don't stand out as the player people want to kill because your commander is not. It's going to be a pain in the butt to have in the field.
Right.
Both in terms of budget and play. I think any deck for the most part that runs weenies that plan on winning with some kind of a overrun effect. Elves in mono green work, but any kind of 2-color elf deck, goblins kind of work the same way. Any of the merfolk decks that have green probably work the same way.
Mm-hmm.
There's win conditions baked in with the multiple different overrun effects. The creatures are for the most part relatively cheap.
Yeah.
And the decks can scale upwards if you want to make them more competitive as you go on. You can then buy the creator who for the deck. And you can invest in some faster mana for the deck. And, I'm going to eventually pick up a 3 visits for ramp. There's things like that you can eventually go with a deck to make it more competitive. But for the most part, those kind of decks are almost always useful and they do scale pretty well.
Yeah. And, it also doesn't hurt just to buy one of the precons every year and don't change it.
Just to have one.
Here's a precon.
Yeah. And they do play pretty well for the most part.
Yeah.
So, another question from Paul Kittner here. How should players approach games against strangers at an LGS or GP, and any changes in deck building or just strategy?
Ooh, I'll go first.
Okay.
You got to have the rule 0 talk.
Yes.
That's simple. And you know what? People are the worst, so there's going to be the liar.
Occasionally you'll get that.
1 out of 100 pods, you're going to get that person that either flat out lies and steamrolls the table, or you're going to get that person, and I've had this happen a few times, saying, I only brought one deck with me to this GP, and it's my Get Rog combo deck.
Right, sure.
This is how I win. And, they were nice enough to explain the combo.
And if they're honest about it.
And, the combo happened, and he said, hey, can I borrow someone else's deck? Because I want to keep playing with you guys. I just don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, though, I don't change my deck building at all between our LGS and going to GPs 6 times a year.
I don't either.
I think we kind of touched on earlier, our meta is, that tuned meta.
Yes.
So I think what we see in our LGS is pretty much what I'm going to see in the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get steamrolled every now and then. Yeah, I'm going to be the strongest person in the pod every now and then, but I am comfortable saying that most of the time I feel safe. All my decks are not going to be too powerful for a random pod in the wild.
Or if it is, it's going to kick off in a way that I think for the most part isn't going to make anyone upset. people can like a lot of times, because I've absolutely had games with my Vela deck where it's done crazy things. But I think looking at the pieces of the table, I think people are like, oh, that's clearly like, it's not like I just played, $3 or $4 $100 worth of mana rocks into a combo piece.
Right.
Same thing with my Recce deck. My Recce deck has kicked off with strangers before where it's, blown up on turn 7 or something. But it's also one I think people tend to look down and be like, I just got killed by, Miri Cat Warrior and Avaya Pashiri and Hope of Jirapur. People tend to not like, they understand that that's not anything too broken.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah.
So how I approach it against strangers, first thing I do is usually, even after the Rule Zero talk, I tend to play my weakest deck.
Okay. I
would rather lose because I underestimated the power level than win because I overestimated it.
Okay.
And look like I'm the bully. I would rather be the person who chose poorly and played an underpowered deck than the person who chose poorly and played too strong of a deck.
Gotcha.
So I try to err on the side of weakness. I'm trying to think. I tend to not play anything too dirtily unless I've warned people in advance. Like I did bring my Zero deck to Vegas, but I only played it a couple times.
Okay.
Because it's annoying. It is. There's a gazillion planeswalkers out, and
right. And though you probably played those games in the hotel room, not actually at the GP.
I don't know if I did play it on the floor.
Yeah.
I'll probably bring it to Chicago with me for Commander Fest Chicago. And if I play it, I will tell people ahead of time I'm playing mono white planeswalkers. It's going
to be a game.
It's grindy.
It's going to be a while. Yeah.
It's going to be grindy. So, we played it I did play it on the floor at GP Madison.
That's right, you did. Oh, that game took forever.
And it was a game that took 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, I try to warn people about that one. So I would say bear in mind how your deck tends to play and warn people ahead of time about that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I don't worry about it too much beyond that.
Yeah, the little bit I do with my strategy is, even after Rule 0 and I still see maybe decks that might be faster than the one I'm playing, I either play more recklessly, I guess, because I want to keep up, or I sandbag, or I just, maybe I change my deck to something faster to compete with everybody.
Sure.
I am also one of those people that if I see a Narset on the table, I assume the worst. You can tell me 1,000 times it's not wheel or land destruction, but it's one of those, I burned me once, shame on you, burned me twice, shame on me.
Yes.
Now I just don't get burned anymore.
Don't bring your gross, weird anime playmat.
That's just sportsmanship, I think.
Yeah, in most, because it's happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to be offended, but somebody else might be, or a judge is going to walk by and say something. Why even
risk it?
Why even risk it? And just don't do it.
And on the chance it does happen and a judge talks to you, don't make a scene. Just say, hey, flip it over. Just flip it over like they're asking you to.
The other thing I would say that I've seen pop up on occasion is maybe watch your language in terms of swearing. And I've occasionally done it myself. This is a family-friendly podcast in terms of language, but it's not like I don't swear out in the real world.
I am a sailor when it comes to that type of stuff.
And it's very easy at an event when you're playing with adults your own age to drop the occasional F-bomb or something and not realize there's a kid playing at the table behind you.
Right.
And I've done it.
Yeah, I have done it 1,000 times.
Or at least I've had to catch the eye of the person I'm playing with and be like, hey, there's a kid.
And you've done it to me, I've done it to you.
Yes.
And
it's an easy mistake to make. I would just try to be conscious of it and don't be offended if someone points it out when you do it.
And I think this kind of reflects back to our meta, though. Our LGS is very family friendly in the sense that friends of ours bring their kids in. We have a very big Pokemon community here, and that those kids might be in there practicing for the big tournament this weekend. So our LGS is really good about, hey, if there's anyone younger than a high schooler in there, watch your language.
Yes.
He's not afraid to scold any of us.
Oh, we have a category here that we're on now named non-MTG questions.
Ooh.
Carlos Munoz asks, what sort of music do you listen to? What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Ooh. I can answer it with the same thing.
All right.
The Foo Fighters.
Oh, that we both went to see last.
Yep. I've seen them 2 times live.
Okay.
And they have been the best show I've ever seen both times. I got to see him when Dave Grohl was in his throne after he broke his leg. And then I got to see him a year later when he was up on both feet.
That was a really good show.
It was a great show.
And it was a long, like they did not mess around. You got your money's worth. They played.
It was a 2.5 hour set and another hour encore.
Yeah, that was a serious show.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a hipster a little bit about music. I'm not as bad as I was in my youth. But I still am a little bit. The best concert I've ever been to, man.
Wilco number 17?
I've seen Wilco a bunch of times. No, the best I've ever seen is a band out of Denton, Texas named Slobberbone that are very, very obscure. They're kind of a country punk band.
Okay, wait. You just said the words country music out of your mouth, and then you put punk in there.
Cowpunk. So, first of all, that's what
don't Google that.
So, in my youth, I was really into alt country.
Okay, I might have to Google that.
Which would be like the modern equivalent of maybe Johnny Cash. So, like country that does, like sounds like old country versus modern country.
Okay.
But the bands that played it tended to also have punk roots.
Okay.
So it was country, but it tended to have a lot of like fast guitar work in it.
Nice. Okay.
So I went through a phase where that was my thing, and still kind of is to a degree. Slobberbone is a band that played that kind of genre of music, very punk-based country. You're looking at Max is looking it up now.
I'm literally looking at Wikipedia right now.
And Wilco was originally an all-country band.
Okay.
So anyway, Slobberbone, they played, it was a last-minute show that was announced in Madison, Wisconsin when I lived in Madison. They were playing like Minneapolis on Monday, and they played in Chicago on Saturday. And at the last minute, they decided to do a show in Madison on a Sunday night, and it was a snowstorm.
Oh, no.
And I had bought tickets like Sunday afternoon when I saw it was announced. So my then girlfriend, who's my now wife, had no interest in going, but she went anyway to humor me. And we got to it was a large bar, but it was basically a bar. We got there, the band is sitting at the bar drinking, and there's, I think, 4 other people.
Including the bartender?
Including the bartender that are there.
Those are the best shows.
They played probably a 2.5 hour set.
For 5 people.
For 5 people on a Sunday night, like they were playing to a stadium.
That's awesome.
So number one, I like the band anyway, but like the being able to sit 3 feet away from them as they're tearing through like 3 albums worth of songs, like they're playing for a packed house. And in their they probably, I mean,
they already got paid.
And what else are they going to be doing on a Sunday night in Madison in a snowstorm anyway? Besides drinking, they might as well drink and play. But that show for that reason, that was an amazing one to see. And about 5 years ago, I saw Neutral Milk Hotel in Minneapolis, who's a band I've always loved. And there's a lot of kind of backstory I won't go into about the band, who's mostly one guy who kind of disappeared for like a decade. And then all of a sudden booked a bunch of shows. So like he's this musician that I love that I thought I would never get a chance to see that all of a sudden played a show. So being able to see him live was great. And the whole crowd was kind of the same way I was. They were just like holding their breath to not frighten him away.
Okay.
And everyone had like big eyes. Like I looked at everyone was like they were amazed that they were there. So the vibe from that show was really cool. And it was a great show.
Nice.
So those are the 2 I will mention that are standouts for me. Raphael, what is your favorite bear? I thought that was going to be beer at first. I'm like, this is a Max question, but of course,
bear.
Of course he says bear.
What about you, Dana? Well, who's your favorite bear, Dana?
Seth Rogen.
Oh, that's a good call. Mine's up there. Mine is very similar. Fozzie Bear.
Oh, okay. That's good. Good answers. Jim Dean, all-time favorite movie, and is there a reason behind it being your favorite? And if you woke up tomorrow and magic didn't exist, what would be your new hobby/game? So I'll do the movie first, Max. What's your favorite movie, and why is it your favorite?
I don't think I have one.
Okay.
I think I have movies that I'll just go and watch because they make me feel good, but I wouldn't say any of them are like my definitive favorite. So like, I love Jason Sudeikis, so I'll watch a lot of stuff with him in it.
Okay.
I'm a Kevin Smith fan, so like I'll watch a lot of his stuff. Dogma might be my favorite movie of his.
Okay.
Which I can't find anywhere because Harvey Weinstein owns it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't really, I'll watch the MCU over and over and over again all day long. But that's about it.
For favorites, like there's movies that I adore for a lot of reasons. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a favorite of mine. Original Die Hard is almost
best Christmas
kind of
movie ever.
Right, yeah, it's a great action movie. My favorite movie of all time, and I won't argue it's the best movie or anything, but one of my favorite movies is Streets of Fire. It has an amazing, ridiculous soundtrack.
Yeah.
That's Jim Steinman songs, who is the guy that wrote a bunch of Meatloaf's 70s music. I'm a fan of Jim Steinman because he's so ridiculous. The soundtrack for that movie is ridiculous. The premise is ridiculous. At one point, the hero, the ending, the final scene is the hero fights Willem Dafoe it's a sledgehammer fight that takes like 10 minutes. Willem Dafoe is the bad guy, and he's wearing leather hip waders the entire time. It's amazing. I need to rewatch that movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. He solves every problem. Like there's more than one time, at least 2 different times, he solves a problem by punching out Diane Lane, who's his girlfriend.
Okay.
He solves an situation, or like he thinks he does. The hero solves a problem by knocking out his girlfriend, and it happens more than once.
Wow, that movie would not get made today.
It would not. But it's one of my favorites because it's just
ridiculous.
It's so nuts and over the top and ridiculous, and I love it.
Okay.
If Magic didn't exist tomorrow, what would be your new hobby?
I mean, I kind of have 2 other primary hobbies, which would be hockey.
and drinking beer?
Oh, I didn't even count that one.
Borderlands?
Borderlands, yeah.
Okay. Man, I don't know.
And then beer.
Sure.
Okay, we're good.
I would probably in terms of games, I would probably get sucked back into playing a lot of League of Legends, I would guess.
Or like World of Warcraft?
Yeah, probably more League.
A little quicker.
It's a little bit quicker, and the stat modeling kind of stuff really speaks to me.
Yeah.
In terms of like what makes a good play and what makes a good use of lane in the game, like trying to maximize the income, that kind of thing. So I think maybe that a little bit would be the kind of thing I would get back into.
Okay.
I don't have time for it right now. Magic has I used to play a lot more League, and Magic has definitely sucked that up.
You definitely did. I remember those days.
Oh, we had a couple card game design questions here we'll hit quick. Matthias, and this was also asked by Jim Dean, Andrew Camacho, and at Crazy Puerto 92. If WotC asked you to do a design on a commander, what would that commander be?
Oh, wow.
So is there anything that you really would like? I mean, you don't need to like throw the exact card out there, I don't think, but is there anything in colors you'd probably look to do? And I guess I will answer this because I do have an idea while you're thinking here.
Good, because this is going to be hard.
I did mention I would like to see a Phoenix commander. I think you could do a Phoenix commander in Boros. I think Boros does need help. And I think you could do it where it does something for a creature coming back into play from your graveyard or from exile, which is what a bunch of Phoenixes do anyway. So it could get a trigger off the Phoenixes doing the thing that they're doing. It could even get a trigger off things being put into exile of some sort, so then you could get a bonus off casting Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile, because white tends to have exile effects as well. So it could maybe encourage you to then run like Final Judgment for your board wipe instead of Austere Command, because you would get a bonus for exiling things. And then your Phoenixes could maybe come back from exile. I think there's a commander there that you could build in Boros with Phoenixes that would make sense and do something kind of unique and interesting. So that's what I would be trying to figure out a way to do.
I think if I had to pick anything, and this is very loosely based, is something to help like a mono white weenie commander. Like,
sure.
Odric 2.0 is okay because he can move those keywords around everywhere.
Yeah.
King Kenrith, I guess, would be okay, but then you're in 5 colors.
Right.
But like, there's nothing really that helps mono white weenies get through. Like the Azuri of mono white is what I kind of want to look for.
That would make sense. Yeah, because white could use the help here a little bit as well. Joseph asks, if a card has a cost BB, so 5 Bs in the rule text, you may have your life become a 1 instead of paying this card's mana cost. Complete the card. So basically, it's a 5 mana card, and you have the choice to make your life total 1 instead of paying this card's mana cost. Complete the card. Man. So it would have to be something game-breaking.
Okay. I think I got it. It's a sorcery for 5 quintuple black. You may have your life total become 1 instead of paying the card's mana cost. Search your library for up to 2 cards and cast them for free.
Okay, so your life total becomes 1, but you're basically tooth and nailing kind of. I was thinking some variant on a Doomsday pile.
Yeah.
Where you drop down to 1 life, make your Doomsday pile. I don't know what the exact specifics would have to be. If it would only be 3 cards, and then you draw. Like I don't know what it would have to be, but basically it would have to be an effect that
it's make it or break at that time.
It has a good chance to win you the game, but also doesn't guarantee the win. Like it's respondable. So yeah, it would have to be something along those lines, I think. Steve R asks, when do you think the current level of power creep has to cap out, or in 5 years we'll be eliminating players by turn 4?
I think this is kind of meta dependent. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Our local meta has kind of done the power creep and it implodes, and the power creep happens again and it implodes. And I think that shows a healthy meta, because you get enough new people in where you all can't be running mana crypts and mana vaults, so you got to tone the power back so you don't shoo those new players away. I do agree though. Like I think this kind of has one of those things where everybody wants to be on the same power level.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those people saying, hey, let's tone it back, this is going to happen in 5 years. You're all going to be like, combo out, I win.
I think from a design perspective, there's only so much power creep they can do. Like the super crazy mana rocks. I mean, yes, we got Arcane Signet and we just got the other half of the talismans. But aside from that, what's the last great mana rock we've had?
Exactly. I mean, Arcane Signet is really good. I'm not denying that. But when compared to Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, it's a night and day difference in power level in the sense, because 2 mana to make 1 of any color is not as good as 2 mana to make 3 colorless, which will go into something else, which will go into something else, and then you just win the game.
Yeah, so I think part of the issue here is, not issue, but there's just limited ways, I think, that they can power creep Commander. I think we've seen in the last few years the commanders have themselves power creeped, whether it's something like Brea or Atraxa that are fairly strong, or the new Brawl commanders that just all draw you cards for existing. But again, what can they do beyond that? What can be strong? What will they print as stronger than Chulane? Nothing. Like there's a limit with how far they can push things. The Planeswalkers have been pretty pushed the last few years. Again, I don't know if they can push that any further. And a Planeswalker being really pushed for Standard doesn't necessarily mean they're really pushed in Commander. Like Teferi dominated Standard for a long time.
Both of them do.
Oko's dominating Standard right now, and neither of those are cards I'm really worried about in Commander.
Yeah. On that note, what I think would worry me down the road is how much more they do of this straight to modern sets.
Yes.
Because we saw a lot of great stuff for EDH, the Talismans, Hogak sees some play, but they were able to really push the boundaries of saying, hey, let's bypass Standard because we know this isn't going to do well there. And let's put it right into Modern, and that alone is instantly moving that power level from a 5 to an 8.
Sure.
So that's really where I would start keeping my eye on, is more straight to Modern sets, because that's where they can kind of unshackle themselves a little from the design restrictions they have to do for Standard.
For me, my main concern would be these Brawl-type commanders like Chulane or Corvald, or even, Arcades we got, last in the previous year's core set, or I'm trying to think what other ones there are in there. The Morph Commander in this year's one, where they've really been doing a lot lately, where they add draw onto a thing that Commander's already doing. And it's not that I think is bad necessarily, but if everyone's running or has access to those commanders that just reward you for being there, the Tatiova, for example.
Right.
It's not that they're super powerful, they are, but it also puts you in a position where, why would you run anything else? If you're playing a Bant deck, and unless you're like using Angus McKenzie specifically for the fog effect, Chulane's probably better than every Bant commander you could be running. If you're playing in Jund, unless you really need something super specific, Corval's probably better than whatever Jund commander you're running, Prosh being the exception because you're doing that real specific Prosh thing. But like Joey on the EDH Recast mentioned, he's got a Windgrace deck, and he thinks Corval is better at doing the Windgrace stuff than even Windgrace is.
It probably is.
And Windgrace is a really good commander.
Right.
So I think that's the problem, where they're making so many really splashy push commanders that it makes it so you're neutering yourself by not running one of them. That's the power creep area that worries me.
Yeah.
But that's really, I think the rest of the stuff, there's just only so much they can do. And it's pretty easy to just not play CEDH if you don't want to do that.
Exactly.
That's a lot of questions, Max.
It was a lot of questions, and we loved answering all of them. We still have more to go.
These are fun to do, actually. I've enjoyed doing these mailbag episodes. Just being able to talk about this kind of stuff without a real necessarily strict guideline show topic has been fun.
Exactly. And I mean, full honesty here, I don't preview these questions. I opened the document this week to do the prep, mainly because I didn't clear the list of all the ones we did on the last time.
Sure.
So and then I made the list current, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And the next time I opened the list was today.
So, and I think we'll probably be doing this every other month, I would think, is the plan.
And we'll probably shoot a re-ask out there eventually, probably in the new year, because we still have about 15 more questions to go.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back on Thursday with another Deck Tech. Our show is edited by Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at YSquishy1. See you next week. Commander Central out.